Aeril. Noria was neither the land's original name nor that of the people which have called it home since the heroic age. That would be Calais. Noria was the name given to the land by the Republic of Mycenae before the Calayans conquered Mycenae and enslaved her people. It was 79 years after this catastrophe that the empire in Noria finally emerged beneath the grips of Melanthios the Great. From Gaius Aetian, Norian History, Book 1, Chapter 2, Sections 1 through 3. He stopped for arms and men in a grove of stone oaks. Around them blew a hot, dry breeze, and on it a murmur of famine. Waiting for rain? Aeril asked as the soldiers approached atop their high steeds, russet and white and black. Mail they wore, off-white and rusty red, the colors of some nobility. Their leader, his steed the black stallion, made a jowled frown. Does it look like rain? A mid-morning's greeting to you too. Pulling down his riding scarf, Aeril addressed them in the flowing tongue of High Norian. That should keep them off balance, he thought with the faintest smirk. Their type was plain to see, one all too common in the 10 and 3 years since the discovery of silver on Aedenite lands. A mid-morning's greeting to you too, he snorted. Who are you, and where do you come from? And so the dance begins. Aeril sighed, tapping a finger against his chest. First they had asked who he was. Then they would ask for money, payment for keeping these roads safe. Bandits, mayhaps they'd say this time, though long afore it had been the likes of Kaiso the False, Melita the Dowager, and the despot Sarpedon Stonetooth. Usurpers all, cut down by the nascent emperor in Noria. What Tychon Otho would do to such men, Aeril wondered, if he even knew they existed at all. I am a man returning home, Aeril finally replied. I am from Erdonia. Erdonia? One of the soldiers laughed, trotting his white steed forward to sniff Aeril's small, pale brown mare. Don't you know town is back the way you came, boy? Aeril sighed. Typical. The white horse smelled Aeril's mare, but the white's rider smelled Aeril's coin purse, knowing it, in all likelihood, held more than whatever sum the Empress Procne Adon might be paying them to protect her and her husband's silver. If not for that, and the masked grips emblazoned on their breasts, they'd be little more than highwaymen, squeezing until someone finally made a fuss. Squeeze, scamper, repeat. Even a boy would know how to follow a road. Aeril fished around in his traveling robe. Or which beasts merely growl instead of bite. Besides, I have this. Aeril showed it to them. Iron it was, and formed as a stylized eye, a bead of shining bronze in place of its pupil. Around the eye danced runic constellations of similar color, one for each school Aeril had shown promise in. White's eyes went wide and pale as the sun baked stones and ruined pillars around them. Aruk! You're sapiens! I had no idea. Which academy has sent you our way? Get bent, Cleo! Black barked. He's just a hatchling. And nevertheless, under the Eastern Rookery's protection, Black's expression stiffened at that. Even if their mysteries are not fully yet mine, he added to himself, if they ever might be. Aeril eyed Red, wondering why he had so far remained silent. For a moment their gazes met, only for one to find the other opaque with understanding. Black nervously cleared his throat. Then, young man, what brings you east of New Nirkayam? Aeril hid the medallion beneath his robe, feeling a brush against the other, older amulet hanging from his neck. A personal matter, one best not discussed where others might listen. But tell me, isn't this the part where you three continue trying to relieve me of my hard-earned coin? Or have you reconsidered? Aeril smirked at their startled expressions. These men were used to shaking down farmhands and cobblers, common folk seen as little more than pieces by the hand that moved them. These men were also pieces, even if they called themselves players in that great game. Surely they weren't so nearsighted as to antagonize the Rooks and their august order. Black shook his head. For you, no toll. Good. Aeril pulled up his scarf, kicked his horse into a canter, and left them and their ruinous haunt behind. Hours later, past dry canals and drying cisterns, he could finally see it. There, at the base of Erene's hill, at the eastern edge of Erdonia's rolling plains, stood Castle Ravencroft. Situated on the precipice between the mountains to the east and the deep gorge to the west, it was a dilapidated mess. Comprised of stones from the nearby hills and bricks exhumed from the ruins deep beneath its foundations, Castle Ravencroft resembled more the castle-like interpretation of a sacked city than any true citadel. Even so, Castle Ravencroft had stood for over 1,000 years. Far above, deep in the windswept white hills, was the ruins of a great stone road, leading nowhere and going nowhere, the maker long since forgotten. Just as I remember. Hooded and nameless, Aeril rode his mare through Ravencroft Village, the small town which had long ago sprung up near the castle which shared its name. After that he crossed the gorge and its great bridge, a massive contraption of tar and wood and iron and stone. Massive chains bound its support to counterweights meant to destroy the bridge as a last resort against attack. They yet remained rusty and unmoved. Halfway across the bridge, Aeril paused to peer over the edge at the haunted ruins below, resting so deep in the gorge that the sun's light would only ever find them at midday. The wind was blowing a bit harder now. First he stopped at the stable, a small thing built up against the old keep. There he found Eli, the stablemaster, a man of about 40. Eli walked with a slight limp after a horse had shattered his pelvis several years afore. "Take care of this one." Aeril softly handed Eli his reins in a silver drachm bearing the face of Tychon Otho. "She's kind, if you're patient." Eli glanced from the horse to the hooded figure before him. "A coin for a horse? I need 2 more dinars for that. Base cost is 6, plus 2 for each day you plan on staying, unless you're a soldier. Then it's double." "And what about me, Eli?" Aeril lifted his head, the game gone from his voice. The stablemaster paled. "Aeril, God's preserve us, I never thought I'd see you again. What brings you here?" "To pay my respects." Aeril lowered his head again and slipped Eli another silver drachm. "For your silence, I have a little something in mind." "Oh, I see." Eli leaned in close. "The Lord Marula should still be hearing petitioners. Best get at it." "Of course." Aeril bowed and took his leave. Inside the great hall there were 6. 2 were petitioners, 2 guards donned in the black and midnight blue of the Maruli, and 2 nobles presiding over them. One of the petitioners was a man of about 30, with a head of glistening chestnut hair. The other was twice his age, all splotchy skin, trembling hands, and dressed in what seemed the better of 2 sets of clothes. The lord, in contrast, wore a sunset blue robe flecked with green, a sword resting against his stone throne. To his left was his legate, armored in lamellar half-plate and half an armory in of themselves. Seeing them, Aeril wished for little more than to rush forward and pull back his hood. Instead, he waited. "Your Grace," the old man insisted, "the blaze broke out when I was feeding my sheep. I'd never be so unwise as to build a fire right next to my lavender field, especially at a time such as this." "You lie," snapped the other petitioner. "Everyone knows your hunger for grilled meats, Tatian. Why else would I have dug that ditch between our fields? In case," Tatian's chin quivered as he spoke, "a certain Martinus might want to destroy my business and use the trench to protect his own crops." "You fiend!" the younger man yelled. "How dare you lob such accusations at me in front of the Lord?" "Because I put my defense in the justice of what I say." "Enough!" The Lord's voice boomed round the chamber. A man of 23, he was only 3 years older than Aeril, with dark, wavy hair and brown eyes flecked with black. "I hear your stories and come to this conclusion. Martinus, excluding the first seed, you will provide Tatian with half this season's harvest, but will be given back in turn half of that amount from my personal gardens. As for the remaining fourth, you will have the right to buy that amount from my stores at discount price. The same goes for you, Tatian of Ravencroft Village. The people of Erdonia are one, and I will not have petty squabbles tear our land apart. What say you?" Tatian bowed. "A most wise proposition, my lord." Martinus crossed his arm. "I'd rather have my field burned than give any of my harvest to that adulterous fox." And that is all I needed to hear. The Lord of Castle Ravencroft clapped his hands. "Rubifer, seize Martinus and send him to the cells. We will discuss his crime of vandalism on the morrow." Martinus' face went pale. But with honor, your grace! One of the two guards brushed past Aeril and quickly escorted the protesting man from the hall. As for you, Tatian, the lord of Castle Ravencroft turned to the older farmer once the younger's voice had faded. My hall and table are open to you tonight. There I will wish to hear all you have to say on the peculiar trade of Arcania hunting. Oh, thank you, thank you! Tatian clasped his hands together and bowed. You may approach Lucian Marula, the legate announced once the old man had left, Lord of Castle Ravencroft. Aeril's boots echoed off the stone floor, leaving dust where they went. Your grace, Aeril bowed. Who are you? The Lord Lucian Marula addressed him in low Norian. And where do you come from? Aeril cleared his throat. I am called Nicander of the Many Paths. The streets of fair Calais were my home, that southern tell and its spires of the gods, alabaster, and blood. A slight smile grew on Lucian Marula's face. Nicander of the Many Paths? I thought he came from nearer Circaia. This Nicander comes from fair Calais, Aeril countered. But tell me, your grace, I thought Casimir Marula, the Iron Raven, was lord of this castle. Lord Casimir Marula rides the sword path, Lucian Marula answered. He besieges Green Navria at Emperor Tychon Othu's pleasure. But you tell me, traveller, what business brings you to this time and place? Aeril lifted his two hands like a harspex proclaiming their vision. Honey and wine, your grace, honey and wine and water. I have a debt to repay and honors to give. I only ask that you provide me with these offerings. The legate's hand drifted to the sword at their side, suspicion alive in their owl-brown eyes. You? Lucian Marula held up a hand. A moment, Fortuna. Yes, your grace. Fortuna stepped back, the hand gone from their blade. Tell me, Nicander of the Many Paths. The lord turned back to Aeril. In what way have you found yourself here? I was told a man with your name once slept beneath an ebon-gloam tree and spent 8 years finding his way back home. Perhaps I am 3 years early. Switching to High Norian mid-sentence, Aeril removes his hood and lets his own dark hair fall to his shoulders. It's good to see you, Lucian. At once a laugh escaped Lucian's lips. It's good to see you? That's all you can manage after half a decade? Aeril shrugs. Sorry to disappoint. The lord then rises from his seat and extends his arms. Wordless, Aeril Marula steps forward and embraces his older brother. There they stand. I've missed you, you know. Aeril glanced behind himself, seeing the remaining guard's sobered expression. I've missed you too, Lucian, and I'm sorry it had to be like this. When I heard about Mother, I didn't let wind or sun stop me, angered that I couldn't share her final hours. Aeril then turned to face Fortuna. Whereas Lucian had greeted him warmly, Fortuna looked him up and down and scowled, their owl-brown eyes narrowed with contempt. Get yourself cleaned up, they ordered. You're tracking dust all over the hall. What a joy to see you too, Fortuna, Aeril replied amiably. Nearly as much as being in this place called ours. Fortuna snorted and stepped back behind Lucian's left. They played the part well as ever. A most cunning show of jurisprudence, Aeril continued once Lucian had again seated himself. It seems you have taken our father's lessons heartily. And you yours, Lucian replied. How was the initiation? Did they truly have you tossed in a closet for a full day and night without food or water? Aeril waved him away. We can discuss the details over dinner. For now, piety draws me below. Half an hour later, abandoning the light of afternoon for a lamp's glow, Aeril passed beneath the old keep and into the chasm of the crypt below. Not far, he reassured himself as he entered. Not far at all. 5 years it had been, though, and Aeril shivered all the same, feeling the chasm's darkness reach out him with fingers like the liches of old legend. According to the annals of the Maruli, when deep within the heroic age Castle Ravencroft first rose from the side of Arene's hill, the chasm of the crypt lurked unknown and undisturbed. Then, when digging one day beneath the great hall, they accidentally broke into it. We know not what they dug for, Aeril remembered, only what they found. It was an inverted tower, descending into the earth, ringed by a staircase spiraling down into the dark. 2 workers had gone down. One had come back mad, and the other not at all. With that, all labor on the old keep had ceased, and a new keep was built off to its side. Although the new keep had housed the lords of Ravencroft for countless generations, all felt that the chasm was the true heart of the castle, even if its nadir remained shrouded in darkness. As such, the chasm had not gone unused. As Aeril descended, he passed the many rooms carved out of the tower's walls, cellars, prison cells, the old library, the vault, and most importantly, the undercroft from whence the chasm gained its name. Outside its door, Aeril paused, the wooden tray in his hands heavy with offerings and the lamp which shone his way. Turning back, Aeril peered down into the chasm's maw and shuddered. That was the thing about the chasm of the crypt. Although mere stone, somehow it was alive. In winter, water would collect on its walls and trickle down onto the steps, making them a danger to traverse. In summer, though silent, the tower itself seemed to breathe. Standing over the edge, Aeril remembered the time he had tried throwing a different lamp into it. The light had died long before it had hit the bottom. Not that you saw it, he reminded himself. You were already half the way back up, imagining yourself pursued by all manner of monsters. He remembered them still, the ones he had seen. The amethyst-eyed hound, the shadow which slew Sharon Clearsight, and worse. At once, Aeril's hand found his second necklace, his secret necklace, the one that forever remained with him. Taking a deep breath, Aeril opened the door of iron-banded cypress. Inside was a small room, roughly square in shape, 3 plinths at its center. Aeril placed the tray on his right, then took the lamp and placed it on the left. The offerings were meant for the middle one, a hollow shaft of 4 stone plates leading down to a thick layer of compacted earth beneath the undercroft's foundations. Lining the walls were the recipients, hundreds and hundreds of faces preserved for the ages in clay and plaster and stone. Aeril's ancestors they were, numerous as the stars, going back countless generations to his clan's patriarch Cassius Marula and his wife familiar Irene. While all beneath the Norian grips paid the temple of the Triarchy its due through festivals and sacrifice, in private matters one did as they pleased. This, libation in an undercroft surrounded by the images of the dead, was their Erdonian way and had been so for countless generations. As the shadows danced along the walls, Aeril emptied the flasks of honey, red wine, and water into an engraved clay patera and mixed them together with a bone spoon. As he did, Aeril's gaze met those along the wall, trying to see which was his mother. To you, O ancestors, Aeril held the patera over the shaft, whose blood and flesh are now mine. I dedicate this offering. Wordless, Aeril began pouring its contents into the hollow shaft, slowly at first, then faster and faster until the mixture cascaded down in a dark tide. Watching it, Aeril's hand found that second necklace, that which was his secret shame and most precious treasure. Holding it, Aeril knelt and began to pray.